Hey guys, this will be video 2 for the how to design build a 58 Explorer replica. And I almost said paint it sapphire blue, but not this guitar. This is a 58 Korina. This is black Limba. And I'm going to talk about this guitar in fairly extensive detail after I talk about this black guitar briefly, because both of these auctions are going live, or listings are going live tonight, and I got to get some pictures of this guitar as quick as I can and upload it as quickly as I can. And in that listing, I promised that, in video 2, I'm going to talk about this guitar for a few minutes and show some images of it and just discuss the difference between these two guitars. But then within about 5 or 10 minutes, we'll get back in the saddle and we'll talk about making templates to do your control cavities and the control cavity covers and stuff like that. So I think it'll be a fairly interesting video. But with the black guitar, I may even on the front end go ahead and do a little bit of mock-up. So this discussion may not take place for another 15 or 20 minutes. So if you're not interested in any of that stuff, just scrub forward a little bit, and then we'll get to this guitar as far as actually building it. I will go ahead and do a bit of a flyby in reference to this guitar. I did get the 1/8 inch roundover done. It's about 95% sanded and prepped, enough to get me going. It's really beautiful. It's a great guitar. It's just the tone, the tone. Well, I'll do that stuff later on, but we'll do some tap tone analysis of it. But man, it's just unbelievably vocal, beautiful guitar. But otherwise, I haven't done any more work to the guitar from video 1, and I may actually go into a little bit of conversation at the very end of this video, if there's time, about installing your neck and what you need to do to set the pitch and just verify that if all of your jigs were good, all this should go together, with great ease. But it also should be really strong. And I think I've already covered a little bit of this in video 1. But we'll spend a little bit more time talking about the pitch that we want, and maintaining, center lines and stuff like that, and making certain that we're coming together with a really beautiful guitar. So again, let me put this one to the side, and then trade places with the black guitar. See if I can do this without knocking it over. Oh, this one. I just sprayed 2 really thin coats of nitrocellulose clear on this guitar. Well, just about 5 hours ago, but it's dry enough to handle. But if you do handle it, make certain that you get some like wildcat fur or something like that, something to just kind of make certain that you don't put in any indentions in your body. Okay, what is this guitar right here? This is the specs clarify this guitar fairly well, but what this is a quarter sawn Honda mahogany neck, which is really makes the guitar as far as the tone goes. This is a quarter sawn poplar body, but it's a 2-piece. It's built out with a center line, but it is quarter sawn, and then it is based on the actual 1958 footprint, identical to all the other ones that I have built. And the plans came from a company called Electric Herald. Now, this being, you can probably see just a little bit of orange peel, only because this guitar has not been final buffed and wet sanded up to like 1500 grit. However, you should be able to see that it's going to glow like a 69 Chevelle. Okay, it's going to be a really beautiful guitar. So it's a little bit rough right now. It's got, the more I touch it, it's getting dust smudges all over it. But basically, it's just a very traditional guitar in the layout, in the sense that it'll have I'll go ahead and talk about this. It'll have your traditional neck pickup volume, and then it'll have your bridge pickup volume, and then your master tone. And this is how I build my wiring harnesses. I build them myself. Vintage braided wire, pushback cloth. I use CTS 525K pots. They're a little bit hot, so for a rocking guitar, always have to look at the specs. This is a 0.022 UF 400 volt 716 series orange drop. What is that? It's just like vintage Gibson tone, or well, I should say vintage. It's just a warm Les Paul type tone. So, and then CTS that will be your volume and volume up there. So that's how I build my harnesses. They'll be in component form, and then once they go into the control cavity, then everything gets wired together. So it's a bit of a complex build in that you build the well, you have to build the wiring harness. I don't know if this one's cut. Is this one cut? Yeah, this one's cut. So you have to build your wiring harness to receive your three-way, which, well, I don't have to. Well, yeah, I guess I will show you. As long as I don't scratch the body. So obviously you would install your three potentiometers, and this applies to this other guitar over here. You would install your three potentiometers, install that set and install this set, drop that down into the jack location, and then do all your wiring, and then then you just put the pickguard on. So it has to be done in component form, is I like to call it. I'm trying to make certain I don't scratch that guitar. And I only use Switchcraft three-way, and then that's a Switchcraft output jack mono. Again, all traditional. And I won't start talking about wiring. I talked about that a little bit, but you can really tell the difference in the Switchcraft. And I mentioned in the listing that this is called the Switchcraft. This is the L type, meaning the L. This is what they would have put in the Gibson SG or the Flying V, wherever the Flying V, I can't remember where the Flying V goes, or in the Explorer. So it's not the tall one, which would be in well, it's upstairs for the the Les Paul type. Okay, so in other words, it's all period correct and accurate to this original design. So I talked about the fact that it is a poplar body, which produces and here's what's really cool. What's amazing is as you paint a guitar nitrocellulose lacquer, it takes on a much cleaner, more centered note, just a beautiful note. So whereas if you just left it raw, I gotta be careful I don't scratch it. Whereas if you just left it raw, or painted it with like a polyurethane or something like that, it's not nearly as beautiful of a tone. But the nitrocellulose lacquer really, really makes a big difference. Let me see if I can. I just have to show this upside down because to keep from damaging it. But this is true 58 Explorer specs, the dimensions and everything. However, as you can see, I do a double adjustable truss rod in there. And let me see if I can find a safe spot. But once you come across it with your all parts reproduction truss cover, then it looks exactly like a 58. Okay, but you have the added benefit of the double adjustable truss rod in there. This one, the only reason I did this long tenon in this one is because I had the additional material, and some people like the idea of seeing that long 58 tenon, but it's unnecessary. You could stop the tenon back here if you want. Well, if you want to know the truth, you could stop the tenon even further back. But however, this is a fairly short cavity, so nothing wrong with having the tenon go up to at least mostly into the neck pickup location. Okay, I always tape them off so that you can still see the mahogany. That way you can always guarantee that, yeah, I can see that that's about as true to quarter sawn. See, the quarter sawn means the annular rings, well, they're going this way, of course, but then they're truly vertical. That's called quarter sawn. And it produces a very, very articulate note. Beautiful, beautiful little guitar. So now what I need to do is slow down and try to get it to where I can capture some screenshots for my listing. So bear with me as I do this a little bit. Such a beautiful guitar. Not me, not anything that I've done, but just the design. So cool. That should be a really cool picture right there as well. Okay. We're not worshiping them, but you know, it's cool to get to build something. And I may take this tape off, but if I do, I'll have to pause the video because this guitar is finished as far as all the clear cut. Yeah, let me do that. Let me pause the camera. I'm going to remove this tape, and then that way you can see the fretboard in this one video. And because I don't want to try to start pulling on this stuff with the camera on. I guess I need to get a Band-Aid too. I scratched my hand. So let me pause, and I'll get this tape off, and then we'll admire the fretboard. I'll go ahead and just turn the camera or fire the camera back up because I got to think about this is something that would be good to talk about if you're doing paint work or finish work. Sometimes it's best to remove the tape fairly soon after you've done paint work. Otherwise, like if you did a lot of paint work and even with this clear coat, see this clear coat is up on this tape, and the last thing you would want is for that all that paint and or clear coat to dry as if it is drying to the actual tape. So you can go ahead and take the tape off while it's a little bit soft, and you're far more likely to not risk chip out or tear out when you're doing all your painting. And a lot of times, if I've done some nitrocellulose work, I don't do anything other than nitrocellulose. I don't do polyurethane or anything like that, or I don't even know what the other stuff is called, enamel. I just don't. All I do is nitro. But sometimes, like if that tape had been drying for a long period of time, I would have removed that tape with a little bit of mineral spirits on the neck. That way, that would have guaranteed that it softened up. Okay, I got to try to be careful not damage this. This is Bolivian rosewood. I've had this Bolivian rosewood an awfully long time. I bought it from a guy that was retiring from building classical guitars. So it's a really beautiful wood, but not only that, I don't think it'll pick up in the camera. I'll see if I can get it to show, but it's 100% perfectly quarter sawn, and it's an extremely straight, tight grain. A lot of your newer stuff has a lot of wave in it, but just please understand this is. I'm not calling myself a master, but this is like master grade wood. This is the type wood that you would put on an extremely high-end classical guitar or a Les Paul replica or something like that. And I've got a fairly nice little stock of that, but a lot of people don't realize, oh, it's rosewood. No, this is probably I've had it about 25, 30 years. There's no telling how old it is, but that's the good stuff. Okay. Beautiful guitar, and that hasn't even been stained yet with like a what is it I use? I always forget. Yeah, Danish oil. I usually come in with a Danish oil after I've polished everything, all the frets, because see these frets still have not been beveled on the side yet. They've only been installed, and then no, I haven't even glued them in yet with CA glue. So I've still got fret work to do on this one. And then I'll be beveling the edges and not what. But the cool thing about this guitar, it's just, God, it just feels incredible. And I have to really be careful about using too much of my rosewood because once it's gone, that would be really difficult to replace. Okay, so enough fretboard worship. But what is this guitar? It's basically identical to a 58 specs. Kluson set up for, I'll get the tuners out in a second, but it's set up for the Kluson vintage specs for the Explorer design. It will be receiving a bone nut. Just car frets, double adjustable truss rod, as I mentioned. And if you don't understand this, pay attention to how I discuss in the rest of this video series how I install my truss rods. I don't just throw them in and glue the fretboard down. I take a lot of time to epoxy everything in, and just I'll talk about that in the future. It's a really quality build. You know, obviously the true tenon design, we've already talked about that enough, but nonetheless, then everything is, but I'll just flush everything up and then blend everything together. Traditional 1 and 1/2 inch thick body. As I mentioned, that 1 and 1/2 inch thick. This is a 24 3/4 inch scale, which is historically accurate. Um, and sometimes I'll build them like 1 and 9/16 inch, but I've never built one any thinner than that. It will be receiving. Wow, I thought they were on the side of the table over there. Oh yeah, I'm looking right at them. It will be receiving the long anchor tailpiece studs and anchors. When I drill these, I always epoxy these in. That will guarantee unbelievable tone and unbelievable stability as well. So you could also go with the gold. We'll do some mock-up stuff later on, but then it will also be receiving the Cluson USA nickel bridge. Okay, and then obviously these. I really should have just saved all this for the makeup, but the parchment pick guard and control covers. So let me pause. I'm going to do a little bit of a mock-up, and then that way you can see the guitar, and then we'll start talking about that guitar over there. Okay, took a few minutes to mock it up, but I'll do a little bit of a flyby. I won't be able to tilt it at all because of the fear of the tailpiece sliding. I don't want to scratch the top, but I've got the bridge pinned with some bamboo skewers. But this will kind of show you what the guitar would look like, or if you build a guitar and paint it all black. And let's see if I can hold it in my left hand. I've got a bone nut, but I don't want to try to force it in because I've got to scrape that black a little bit and fit that in. So as you can see, as it all goes together, it's very much per 58 specs. I love the parchment. I think that's so cool. Obviously, you could go with a black pick guard, but man, the parchment, everything about the parchment, it just really pops. And it also shows that, wow, whomever built this guitar really was able to achieve all the 58 specs, because you can't buy these off the shelf. You can buy them for the 76, but they're not going to fit this body, because this body is it's a little bit bigger footprint than the 76. This horn is a little bit more vintage correct. Well, it is vintage correct. It's identical. It's spot on, but it's a little bit more round down here, and it's also just a little bit longer. And also the whole body back here is taller, longer, and a little bit longer in this direction as well. Not a lot, but enough to be, different than the 76. I hope I got some good pictures there, some images. And if not, I'll do some more later on. Okay, so now on that note, what else should I talk about? Oh, what I probably should do, I've got some little discount pickups here that are nickel, but that would give you an idea of what it would look like with nickel pickups. And I'm not going to try to force anything in there, but I don't have a problem setting it up there. I guess I could do a weight analysis while I've got all these parts up here. So yeah, let me do that. I'll get my scale, and well, that was trying to go in. I don't want it to. Okay, well, so that'll kind of show you what the nickel's really beautiful. Or obviously, you know, if you went with gold as well, that wouldn't be a mistake. So, all right, I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Let me pause. I'm gonna get the scale and let's find out how much this thing weighs. Okay, we're already at 20 minutes. It's amazing how long it takes to give out just a little bit of information. And I know I'm not really, I don't think I'm dragging my feet here. So, all right, let me do this. Get all this stuff out of the way. I'll try to set it up so you can see let's do a tear. I'm gonna start in pounds first. Let's see if I can keep that in the camera. I don't know if that's showing up. If it's showing up, that's awesome. If not, I'll just read it off to you. It is 7.358 pounds. Let's add some potentiometers. I'm just going to set this whole case up here because I don't want to risk scratching the guitar, but that's all the tuners. Here's the press-in ferrules, 7.890 pounds, and I ran short 1 fret when I was doing all the fret work, so let's put a fret in there. Let's see how much a fret weighs. 7.892 pounds, 7.890 pounds. 7.896 pounds. So frets, you know, there's some weight there. Okay, so 7.896 pounds, finished guitar, other than doesn't have the strap buttons on it. So but I've got all that excess weight right there, so I'm not going to put anything up there. It should be under 8 pounds. That's a phenomenal weight, 7.896 pounds, 3,581 grams. Okay, healthy little guitar. She's not too heavy, should feel incredible. And as you can see from all the components, it's the good stuff. And obviously the nickel pickups would look best chrome covered, but you know, sky's the limit. You build your own guitar. All right, let's cut it off. Let me pause, get the table organized, cleaned up. We'll put this over to the side. Actually, probably what I'll do, I'm going to take this back over to my paint booth and hang it back up so it can cure and not be laid on the table. Because with this material, since you just painted it, you run the risk of, you know, indenting into that lacquer. Okay, since we've got the scales on the table and we've got all the parts we need, let's do some assessment of this guitar right here. And I think that'll be a nice transition into getting back on point with this guitar. And I'll just go through the whole thing. It's been about 5 minutes here talking about all this stuff. Where's the on button? Tear. Let's start with pounds first because I don't really see any sense in doing any work in this video. 4.566 pounds for just the raw body. 2,071 grams. Yeah, let's just go ahead and, well, okay, that's enough as far as assessment right there, just to know what the body weight is. Now let's do this. Let me try to get that to where, as I load it up, you can see it. I hope that's showing up okay. All right, let's load it up with a whole bunch of parts. Okay, what I need to do is tear. All right, I'm gonna do everything in pounds all the way up. The full guitar. You can use little bamboo skewers like that. Stick them down in the location. Keep your bridge from sliding around. And also, I forgot to mention, this is not an aluminum tailpiece. This is just one I use for mock-up, so it's one of the heavier ones. So let's get some pickup rings. I guess I'll just go ahead and get the pickups as well. I've got these pickups in there, but they're wrapped up, so let me just put them up there. That'll keep from risking scratching the body, because all we're doing is just shooting for a target weight. Our anchors and studs. What else we got? On the table I'm missing. All right, so what does that weigh so far? 6.024 pounds. Get a truss rod cover. Get an output jack and plate, and then obviously the output jack is right there. We're not going to put a tested kill switch on this one, but we do need to put a plastic up there. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm just going to lay this plastic this way because I want to be able to lay the neck across all this. So let's see what we got. 6.188 pounds, 2,807 grams, 6.188 pounds for a loaded body. Am I missing anything? I don't think so. Now, this neck has not been rounded over yet, so, and then we haven't been drilled out, or obviously it's nowhere near finished. So if anything, this is going to be a heavy assessment. And here's the truss rod that will get put in. And then here's just a scrapper fretboard that I use for doing layout. So if anything, the fact that this neck has not been rounded over yet, and I'm even including this little thin fretboard here, that kind of makes up for the fact that I don't have any frets. And if anything, it's going to be overkill. Okay. Yeah, see, this one's hitting at 8.134 pounds, but some of that weight's going to come off because the Limba, well, I say that, the Limba, the Korina is a fairly light wood, and if this was a real heavy, dense wood, then as you take material off of that neck, that weight would be considered, the variation would be considerable. But since it's such a light wood, when you machine that neck, you don't really lose a lot of weight, if that makes sense. But the fact that I've got that foam on there, I've got a neck that hasn't been machined, it's definitely going to be lighter than 8.132 pounds or 3,688 grams. And remember, we've got that heavy aluminum bar. So this guitar should be well under 8 pounds after it's all said and done. Okay, so this was a great analysis, and I'm glad we got to do that. So let me pause, get all this chaos under control, and we'll come back and talk about, I don't know, we'll talk about something. Hey, make sure it's rolling. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, this is really important, and I'm glad we got to talk about that black guitar with the long tenon, and you can see this body is different. This one's a little bit shorter. You might be thinking, well, is that a problem, or is it going to be long enough to glue in, or strong enough? And the answer is absolutely, and I think I may have already mentioned if I didn't mention it, it's kind of irrelevant that you machine all the way up into the body. I'm fairly certain I did. So let's talk about my reasoning behind how I started from the Stuart McDonald templates, and this template being the base template, which is, obviously your tenon location and all that other jazz. There's a score center line, and then you could lay this one atop this one, and simply by aligning, Get some bamboo skewers. They work great for doing videos and demonstrating things and not making a fool out of yourself, and also helping you, keep things in order. But basically, so this is your traditional Les Paul. The 16th fret location. That's where it joins the body. I don't know if you can see the score lines that I added. That's the 17th fret, the 18th fret, and the 19th fret. And I wanted that 19th fret because for the whole idea of laying out either a flying V or a replica or an Explorer replica. So if this is the traditional location of the traditional Les Paul tenon, okay, let's ask ourselves something here. Or let me just reveal my reasoning for why I built that body the way I did. The whole idea is you're just working off a center line. Oh, wrong one. I always do that. That was the tailpiece anchor. Okay. So there's my reasoning. Basically, the guitar, if you can see the Explorer footprint here, replica footprint, the tenon is in the exact same location. What is different is that, the guitar neck mounts the body at the 19th fret location rather than out here at the 16th fret location. So in essence, you could say it is the tenon itself is shorter because of in relation to where the neck connects the body. However, you've still got the heel of the neck, and in essence, all you've done is really just lengthened the neck. You've moved the heel. You've basically moved the heel from right here to right here, and in so doing, you extended the length of the neck or the axis of the neck. And it's only an inch, maybe an inch and a quarter. So you can see there's really no reason to have that tenon going all the way back to here or further back and all that jazz. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying I think, and that probably what took place was they obviously the Les Paul, which joined the body at the 16th fret, was in production since I think 1950 or 51 or 52, very early, well before the Explorer. So probably all they did, they probably had their routing jig or templates and all that jazz, and they just machined that they didn't create another jig for a shorter tenon. They just machined that long tenon off the Les Paul, and that's why it went all the way up into the body. Okay. So simply put, and that's one of those things, man, when you can see it in template form, wow, it really makes crystal clear sense as to why they did a certain thing. Because quite frankly, when they were building this guitar, they might have had a lot of hesitancy about the build, or they might have been in a hurry to get it to NAMM or something. I think they had NAMMs back in the 50s. They might have been in such a hurry. They were like, oh man, just machine that baby and let's rock and roll. And right at the point where they realized, oh crap, now we got to make a pick guard that goes up there and covers that thing up. Okay, so, and that costs a lot of material. That's a lot of wasted material to make that pick guard. When the pick guard, I'll set this over here. When the pick guard would have looked really nice to have just cut off, hopefully have anything to cover that up. I'll just use that. The pick guard would have still looked nice if it was just a straight pick guard across that bottom. That would have looked really classy. Or either maybe if you just stepped up just enough to make certain that someone's finger doesn't risk dropping down, would have saved a lot of material. But since they were having to hide the mortise and tenon exposure, had to use a lot more pick guard material. But unfortunately, those are things that you can't change, even though they should have spent a little bit more time engineering that body. And also, it might have been to try to cover any sort of glue line that was going on in down the body. I find that hard to believe though, because the Korina, the Limba, is so incredible about concealing glue lines. their glue lines act for the body were actually up here. They weren't on center because they were trying to get one large mass up here. So their glue line was probably right under the edge of that, and they were doing everything they could at a minimum to possibly help hide the glue line up here, because obviously you've got your pickup and you got the pickup ring, and then there's only a very short space here between the pickup ring and the bridge, and then a very short space, maybe an inch or so exposure between the bridge and the tailpiece. So only thing that had to be really I mean, they were well machining everything, but the glue line took off from back here. Okay, a little bit of theory there, and that's just things that I processed through as I was building the first one or two and just kind of getting comfortable with them. And I still have to say this. I got one more on the table over here behind me. This is probably going to be the last one I build. It's not that I don't like them, but I'm really ready to build something else. And I've often thought about just getting back into like large hollow body jazz guitar building and doing the steam bent sides and the carved tops in the back and stuff like that, because I've built enough of these now to kind of satisfy that desire to assess it, determine things like that. Now that I have all those answers, it's not that I lose it. Well, yeah, I do. I lose interest, and I don't want to. I don't really want to build another one. So, but anyway, that doesn't mean I won't. I might in the future. All right, so I talked about those templates enough that I think that ought to be a great case study and reasoning behind why my tenon is shorter on this guitar right here. So now let's talk about moving forward and actually assessing all your machine work, or before you do the machine work and all that stuff, in order to fit this in. And we'll talk a little bit about kind of a cowboy's approach as to how to lay all this stuff out. And you really don't even need to measure anything if you want to know the truth. You can, well, I say that lightly. I just cut a little tenon that I always keep in my arsenal. And then I've got a line drawn at 5/16 of an inch from this top surface. And what that line represents is if this is the bottom, here we go. Basically, this is the top of this tenon block is the bottom edge of the EADG, the G string. Okay, the top of this tenon is the bottom of the G string, and what that's going to do. Where's my block? I machined this little block 11/16 of an inch thick. That's my target when I install my bridge. So I'll go ahead and just set this up here since I got these little fasteners in there. And if you want to know the truth, the one way to do this is to just go ahead and install your bridge, even if you don't know for certain if that's the exact location. You could, well, I don't, it's funny, I'll reach up there to adjust them, but you could go ahead and install your bridge temporarily and just adjust it to the height that you want, and then just manipulate all this back here in order to determine what your pitch needs to be. And then take an angle gauge that you can adjust and assess, and then just assess that angle, and then just transfer it to your neck. And that's kind of what I'm about to do, because I'm going to talk about roll, pitch, yaw, and centering and all that jazz. And I'm just going to show you how you can take on your table saw, cut a little block. I think these are 1.5. Yeah, that's a 1 1/2 inch opening. Which, what is that? Historically accurate. That's what they were. Okay. So what we're wanting to do here is, if we don't have our bridge yet, let's do that. Let's just get this bridge off the guitar, because since I don't have that machined, and I can't put screws in here, even if I put in. See, typically what I'll do is I'll put temporary screws in so that I can kind of get them out easily with a Phillips head screwdriver, and not be reaching down there with vice grips or anything like that, tearing up the threads. And you certainly don't want to use the studs out of your kit where if you don't lose them, they're around here somewhere. So, okay, so what do? Cut a block at the target height that you want your EAD G string, the bottom edge of the G string. Then come in here and you set this up and you do just that. You start assessing based on this target, and you might think, wow, that's kind of thick. Are you sure that's not too tall? It's very deceptive, but what that represents is that location right there represents the center of the fretboard. Let me just put it where it needs to be so it doesn't fall off, or I'm right at the threshold. Man, this is hard to do on camera. I'm just going to have to put it back to the edge. But what this location right here represents, and what this height represents, or this thickness, is the G string at the 19th fret location in the very center of the fretboard. And that's what that line represents right there. But what I will be doing is, obviously, with this block of wood, where's my straight edge? See that block, that dimension right there represents the center of the fretboard. I'm sorry, the center of the bridge. And what is that? That is the bottom edge of the G string traveling above the center, or above the fretboard. And then that represents the pitch that we want to transfer over to this S4S block. Before any of this was tapered, when you build your neck, you want this to be an S4S block. There's nothing wrong with going ahead and have all this stuff machined. I'm not going to start talking about this, but because you're wanting to cut every bit of this on your table saw, well, it can't be tapered. But if you did make the mistake and go ahead and taper this, then you're going to have to temporarily fasten this atop an S4S jig, or at least a jig that will allow you to use your table saw to make these cuts. So, you'll be cutting that dimension off the side, and you'll be moving over and cutting that dimension off, and then the last cut, you'll flip it up and use the fence and cut that dimension right there. And that is about as elementary as you can get when it comes to using the table saw. And that's really an enjoyable accomplishment. You cut those three reliefs first, and then you come in with your miter saw. You still have an S4S neck that's up on the fence, and then you adjust the pitch of the miter saw on the left side cut based on the dimension. Oh, I forgot. Let's see if I got my little gauge. You just use a real simple little gauge like this. I got this at Woodcraft. It's a little discount gauge. I think I paid maybe $5 for this, $7 for it. And that's really all you're. Let me loosen that up a little bit. And I don't care if I get it right. It doesn't matter. I'm basically just showing you. Let me just do it over here so I can see it, because I can't see. Okay. Once you get that where you want it, nothing wants to stay in place. You just set that gauge, tighten up your wing nut, find the 19th fret location, which that line right there represents the 19th fret location when this was just a rough, well, no, it was a perfectly precise machined billet of S4S material. That was one of the first things that I defined, was the 19th fret location in relation to the nut location, in relation to the scale, in relation to how much material did I have. Did I have a knot in the board or something that I was trying to hide or cut out or drop or something like that? Or was there something really ugly that I was trying to get rid of? And I didn't. So basically, I just transfer that pitch, and it's definitely off. It's not that much of a pitch. That's the actual pitch right there. Okay. And usually what I do, I used to take an X-Acto knife and cut those, but I don't anymore. I just use a pencil, and I do a real fine pencil mark, and then that way, in the event I screw up, I can shorten it a little bit, or clean it up in the second or third cut. So obviously, you'd make this miter saw cut with the blade pitched to the left. Then you flip the entire neck over, and then you move the miter saw to the other side, and you make that cut. And it ends up being about 1 3/4 degrees, 2 degrees max. If you go 2 degrees, just plan on going down into the body a little bit to where you're perfectly flush right here with that corner, but then go down about another 32nd of an inch. And that, well, do that if you're too high. If you go down, and you flush out this plane right here with that corner right there and that plane right there, or right on the corner, and then assess your height back here. If you're 3/4 of an inch or 7/8 of an inch, you got a major problem. You got to get this under control. But if you just follow my dimensions at 11/16 inch block back here, roughly 5/16 out of the body to the bottom edge of the G string, and then put this in either flush right here. I can't put it in because this is not finished machine. I intentionally, when I build these necks, I intentionally leave these a little bit thick. Now that's the finished surface, but it's a little bit thick on this back side, so that when I'm fitting this, I can go over to my table saw again and machine off that material, paying extreme attention to detail and not risking my blade coming in here and creating a little notch. Believe it or not, if you did that with Limba, you could get away with that repair and you wouldn't even see it. It's bizarre, but you wouldn't have that liberty with certain choice woods like maple or something like that. That's a game over situation if you do something stupid like that. So, and if anything, just cut up to a certain distance and then stop, and then shave it off with a flush cut saw, chisel and stuff like that, because all that's buried. You don't want to do poor work, but that's all buried, and this is not buried. You're going to see that. Okay. All right, let me check the time. 47 minutes. Okay, let me recap this, because I dove in a little bit too deep. And what I should have mentioned was, how do you find the roll, pitch, and yaw? Let me get this table cleaned off a little bit. I've talked about this so many times in so many videos, I'm actually sick of talking about it, but I have to remind myself that this is probably something that most of the people watching this video have never heard me talk about. Okay, this is when you're installing your neck. The whole idea is, obviously we want to get it on the center line. Okay, and then we also want to make sure it's perpendicular to the body, and then we also want to make certain that it's so we got the roll, we got the pitch, in the yaw. Okay, so we got that, and then we got to get the pitch right, because if we miss any of those three, we're going to have a problematic guitar. So what all this equates to, this is also known as what's called roll, pitch, and yaw, Y-A-W, as if you were flying an airplane. And that's exactly where I learned it initially, because I used to fly a lot. But when and I got to think about this whole thing. Wow, all we're doing here is making certain that we've got the pitch, that we've got the yaw in order to achieve the center line. Because if we got off the yaw, then we miss the center of everything. And then if we screwed up the squareness or the perpendicular, these two lines must be perpendicular to the top, at a minimum the top. If you built a good guitar, they would also be perpendicular to the back. But it's more important that you're perpendicular to the top, because this is your playing surface or building surface of your guitar up here. that's kind of a given. Everything that we're doing, in other words, if we got this neck rolled too high at the base side, well, it's going to transfer all the way down to your bridge, and your bridge is going to be wonky. So make certain that you think about these things. That it's very important. You don't need to roll the bass side down. I've talked about this in a lot of details. When I'm building my jazz guitars, I do roll them down just a small amount, because everything about the jazz guitar is big, and it's big strings, and there's a lot of vibration, a lot of movement. So I run my bass side of my bridge just about a millimeter lower on the bass side. But you don't need to do that on these guitars. Okay, just put them in square and perpendicular. So so let's start with the yaw, or achieving the center line first. And this is so simple. Piece of tape. Let's be nice and exact here. And I'll kind of show you what I'm going through as I'm building the guitar, because I don't when I'm building a guitar, I'm not sloppy at all. I want to be real accurate about even my initial assessments. Okay, that's my guitar. Still the same footprint, still the same body. Everything about it is nice and true. Come up here with my pencil. Make sure I got my lead. Or you can take an 1/8 inch punch. That's how the templates are meant to be used. You take an 1/8 inch punch and you stick it through, and you tap it, and you put a little indentation down into the body. But since I'm just demonstrating this, and then you go to your drill press and you do your drill work. You don't need to be drilling through these, because you run the risk of your drill bit screwing up your templates. Okay, that's worth the whole video right there. Don't drill through your templates. Okay, now that we got these little locations, put our tape down, and we want to try to be as true and straight as possible. Okay, we are assessing the yaw, or we are assessing the center line right now. Nice clean straight edge that you trust. Go up against the tenon. Okay. I usually use I don't think it's down here though, I think it's upstairs, a micro point pen. Okay. Go to the top side. Check the time. 53 minutes. The camera's going to cut off fairly soon. And then what you want to do here, I should be able to get right up to about 1 hour. Let me just do it. Well, I have to show you. See that there's a center line where you glued up the body. What I'm doing now, I'm assessing how accurate was my machine work and all of my templates in order for this tenon and all these pencil marks that I'm making to be centered with respect to the actual glue up line of the body. And if there's anything that's difficult, is to find the center line, or to find the glue up line on Limba. I think I'm right. I can't see. Yeah, okay, I did find it. Wow, I can't believe I saw that. And then the first thing, if you're doing this type of woodwork, you pretty much should have a calibrated eye, and you should be able to look at that, ask yourself, is it centered? And I would be just about willing to bet you this guitar body, yeah, it's close enough for rock and roll. And if anything, it should be perfect. So what I do now is I take the 5 or the 6 in the middle of my ruler or my scale. I put the 5 on the center line, and then I assess what the distance is negative or towards the 4 and what the distance is positive towards the 6. And I'm looking at just under 3/4 of an inch on both of them. So what does that tell us? We got our yaw, or our center line is perfect. So if we did a good job machining that true center to the neck, when this neck goes in, that center line will follow all the way down to the middle of the nut location, and this will be a very simple guitar to build. If you get off, don't let it discourage you. Just work your way to the finish line the best you can. But if you discover some really serious mistakes, well, let's get it cleaned up right now before we go any further. And if in case I forget, I always build this a little bit. I leave a little additional material, almost about a 32nd of an inch on both sides. I leave it a little bit wider so that in the event I did need to move a neck either directly to the right or directly to the left, or maybe do a little bit of cowboy yaw work, then a little bit of slip work, then I can, once this neck gets fitted in, then I sand the neck and the body together, and visually it's beautiful. It might be a 64th of an inch off or a 1/4 of a millimeter, but it all comes out of the wash. And I don't know if there's going to be time to talk about 56 minutes. Well, the whole idea of the way, okay, so that was our yaw, and the way you achieve quality roll is just making certain that you have a perfectly flat surface, and when you do this route work, whatever jig you have in here, it must be true. And typically what I do before I taper the bottom, because this bottom is tapered, I'll do all this sidewall machine work first, just flat, and then I'll come in at the very end and machine again just the bottom, never letting the router bits touch up here and run the risk of screwing up the sidewalls or the perpendicular or the roll axis. So, and then the only other thing would be, well, we've already covered it, achieving the appropriate pitch. And if you got your pitch too high, don't go over here and start trying to remachine your heel. Just drop that neck down into the body, and I drop them down into the body intentionally about a 32nd of an inch anyway. And then after it's all said and done, I come in and I shave off about a 1/4 of an inch right here. And what that does, it makes for a beautiful low profile playing guitar. And what is that based on? That's exactly how they did it in the 50s. They didn't bring them all the way up here, because if they did that, you would end up having to add a little triangular fillet under the fretboard where the fretboard is overhanging. I'm exaggerating. It's not that much. Let me put it where it is. I hope the camera doesn't cut off. It basically would be that right there. Oh, hell, I can't get it right. Okay, so I push that down. I apologize. I'm holding it with my right hand. I should be holding it with my left. So your fretboard's going to stop right there, but you would have that little triangular location to put a little fill in it. Is that a big deal? No, it's a breeze. But just make certain that you don't just cut 2 degrees because it was easier to cut 2 degrees, because you might end up being 3/4 of an inch high back here, or just too high. And even if you were doing a Floyd Rose install, they're the same height. So that was pretty cool to determine that if it's a floating Floyd Rose, if your Floyd Rose is flat on the body, you're going to have to lower that pitch down to about 1.5 degrees. Do your own research to install a Floyd Rose on a flat top guitar, but we're not installing a Floyd Rose. We're doing a traditional, 58 Korina Explorer replica. Does that make sense? So you want this to be about 11/16 of an inch at that location right there. That's the G string. Okay, let me check this out. Yeah, the camera's going to cut off within 30 seconds, so I appreciate you guys dropping in. I'll try to get the table cleaned up a little bit, But that was kind of chaotic at the end, but I think for the most part, if you read between the lines, it should be some really, really good information. And the cool thing about it, it's just real simple assessment of everything that's in front of you. There's nothing really mysterious there. But if you've ever flown an airplane, then you should be able to build a guitar because you're just dealing with roll, pitch, and yaw. Okay? So I appreciate you guys dropping in. I'll go ahead and just end the video right there. I have no idea when the next video will be for this guitar because the sapphire blue guitar is coming together extremely well. And wow, we're over an hour. So anyway, it just is. So I'll just stop talking. I'm looking at the table and I don't think I missed anything. Okay, thanks guys. I appreciate you dropping in. I'll see you in the next video.